Okay. There we go. So good morning, happy Monday to everybody. And it was very funny because I had the title of today's training about the commission, discussing the commission. I don't exactly remember what the title actually is, but I noticed after what happened on Friday, and you guys notice I was very quiet on Friday. And there was a reason. I was actually on a Sotheby's leadership. I do a thought leadership. I actually am the leader of it now. I don't know how I got roped into that, but of other Sotheby's brokers. And so I was on with brokers from Colorado and Chicago and Michigan and California and all over. And as we were on our monthly call, it came through. And one of them, actually, Glenn from Michigan, he's an attorney. So we're like, Glenn, that's the attorney in the group. Let's talk about this. So, and obviously took over a meeting. We all were talking about what happened with the settlement. And I didn't want to start talking about it because, of course, right as that happened, Budge sent out to all our leaders that we were going to have a Zoom at 4. So before I started reaching out to you, I wanted to see what the company's position was on obviously the settlement. So, which is why I was pretty quiet about it. I wanted to let Budge put out his statement. And then, as those of you may or may not have read, Philip White, the CEO, of course, and president of Sotheby's, put out his statement. And then you may or may not have received the actual statement, which of course came out on as well, from the National Association of Realtors. Did you guys all see that as well? So there's been a lot of news media. I'm sure you've all seen that. How fun has that been? So I figured we would have our discussion about this today. Now, you all know I'm on the board of directors at Aura, the board of directors of Florida Realtors. I'm on the Broker Advisory Council for MLS. And there's been lots of rumblings there too, but no meetings have occurred yet. So this is still very premature in the fact that it's very quick. I mean, they set this as a proposed settlement. Let's all be very clear as to what it is. It's proposed. It's not approved. Do I think it'll get approved? I don't see why not, right? Do you guys all agree with that? Why would it not get approved? I mean, it'd be very unlikely for not to get approved, but again, it's not approved. So let's put that out there, number one. Number two, it's pretty straightforward, but there are some semantics that we have to go through. Because as straightforward as it is, they're still gray. Whenever you have something that seems clear, it's never really clear, is it, when it's legal, right? So let's talk about my favorite part. There is, in my opinion, one good thing. You guys are all going to know what I think is good, right? I have been saying, since you've known me and many years prior to that we should all be using a broker buyer agreement. Have I not said that? The National Association of Realtors has been screaming since all this began. Please use a broker buyer agreement. There are many states that require a broker buyer agreement. So now we will all be required, as of mid-July, if this does get approved, to use a broker buyer agreement. Now, I do know Florida Realtors has been revising our broker buyer agreement, and I feel pretty positive that that new revision will be coming out very eminently. So I know because I've been talking to people on the committee. So that will be coming out very shortly. Now, I need to talk about this briefly, and we'll delve into it a little bit more after we kind of go over the framework of the settlement. And please, if you have questions or you want to say something, jump in. But the broker buyer agreement, I know because I got the opportunity to go through all the comments and all the reviews. When we sat at the 360 roundtable event, everybody took notes. You guys remember that? There were scribes at every table. And I did the broker representation, the broker buyer representation. I spoke on and I interviewed Janet and ours. And then we all spoke at the table and kind of gave feedback and thoughts and everything. And then we took those notes and there was a task force and we've gone through them and now we're going to be releasing them to you. Very exciting. But because I'm the one who did the broker buyer agreement, I have seen there's a lot of questions and I can't tell you from exactly where because I don't know what tables wrote these notes, but there's confusion. And just in case there's confusion on anybody in my team, we're going to need to clean these up. So we're not going to hit it right now, but I'm going to tell you what we're going to cover for sure. There's confusion on agency mixed with broker buyer agreement. There's a lot of confusion on that. number one. And there's a lot of confusion exactly how payment works in the broker buyer agreement. So we're going to talk about those things, but we're going to set that off to a little bit later. So this is the first part of the settlement. Everybody will be required to use a broker buyer agreement starting mid-July. Now, one great thing about that, guys, is I feel like one of the reasons people didn't want to use a broker buyer agreement was because they felt like not everybody was using it. So a buyer may not want to work with you because you were requiring it and somebody else wasn't. Well, that is off the table now, isn't it? Because now everybody has to use it, right? So it's an even playing field. Now we're going to talk about some of the negatives after, because the negatives that the press is bringing in. So it's going to give us a little bit of a challenge, but we're going to talk about that after. But let's just talk about the framework of the settlement. The second big part of the settlement is the part that I have been talking about, the part that we at Stellar tried to get over when Stellar had suggested now there's no longer a requirement of the seller to put in a compensation. Remember, there used to be $1 that was required. You had to at least offer a co-broke of $1. Then they changed that, remember? And they said, no, you don't have to put in anything. Big change, right? $1 was required or nothing. They did that because they were hoping to alleviate the need for removing the offer of compensation from the MLS. Well, it's happened. That's what they've done. That's the largest part of this lawsuit. They are now saying MLSs that are owned by associations can no longer offer the co-broke, the buying agent, any kind of offer of compensation. So when you look in the MLS, you will not see any offer of compensation. Does that mean a seller cannot offer compensation? What do you think, Flavia? Exactly. It doesn't mean that they can't. It just means that it cannot be communicated in an MLS. Okay, so that's where the gray comes in. The black and white is it can't be in the MLS. The gray is it doesn't mean it can't be offered. So these are the things that will be explored. I can tell you, why would we ever want to take a listing that we're not going to be able to offer something to the buy side, right? How easy is that going to be to sell? It's not. But how are we going to communicate it? We don't know yet. These are all unknowns. People have already, I've gotten calls. You can imagine. Carrie, what do I do about my listings right now? The answer is nothing. It is business as usual. We're going to continue doing our business as we have for the last 100 years until A, the settlement gets passed, right? And B, everything gets hammered out. I can guarantee you there will be a lot of things that will come to light if this settlement does get approved in terms of how it will get taken out of the MLS, what will happen to listings that will be currently in the MLS, what will be the deadlines that they will need to be removed, all those things. If and when this does get approved completely, this will come out certainly in writing to us. So don't worry, we do not need to focus on that. What we need to focus on is business as usual. So that means if you go to a listing presentation today, do we talk about how much you're offering for the co-broke? Yes. Yes, we do. And if they say, oh, but I saw there's a lawsuit and now you don't have to put it in the MLS, you say, well, first of all, there's a proposed settlement, not yet approved, correct?
But even under the settlement, we're always going to offer, we can offer.
We always can.
It's not going to be staying in the MLS.
Absolutely, Flavia. You can always offer the other side, but it just will not be allowed to go into the MLS. But do we really want to go there? No, because other than you, we're not attorneys, number one. Number two, the more obvious part of this statement is it's not approved yet, is it, guys? And we all know, because we all love attorneys, except for Flavia, we love Flavia, that when it does go for up and, in front of the judge for final approval, things can change, right? So until we actually have a final settlement approved, we have to be very careful what we say. So to our sellers, it is still business as usual. Now, questions on that? First, let's talk about that right now.
Is there any possibility that it won't get approved?
I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. I'd love to say sure, but the reality is probably no. And let me explain to you, for those of you, the whole thing to me is absolutely ridiculous, because obviously we always gave them an opportunity to negotiate. Obviously, there was always two parts of the exclusive right to sell listing agreement that said, this is how much you're gonna pay for the listing part, this is how much you're gonna pay for the cooperating broker, and you get to choose how much you want to offer, right? This has always been there, it's always been negotiable. But so you understand, I've spoken to an antitrust attorney that I know, and she helped me understand what the antitrust lawsuit was about. The antitrust lawsuit in and of itself was simply because the buyer, due to antitrust, the actual definition of how that's supposed to work, was supposed to have the opportunity to pick their agent, their representation based on price. So if the seller was offering it, they're not choosing it. That was the idea. So by taking it away from the seller, the buyer gets to choose. That's the concept. That is the antitrust side of that lawsuit. Do I think it's ridiculous? Personally, of course I do, because here's the problem, guys. If you are a buyer, if you're choosing, that means you're paying, doesn't it? If you're an FHA buyer, do you have the money to pay? No.
And you're forbidden to pay.
And if you're a VA, you're not allowed to pay. Exactly. So two of the most important people that need help can't even get it. So are we really helping buyers out there? No. This was a money grabbing ploy. We all know that. That's all this truly was. And unfortunately, $418 million later, we see that it worked, right? Unfortunately, that's really what this is about. But so you understand, that is what the antitrust side of that lawsuit was about. So it's kind of hard to deny that logistically based upon the definition of what antitrust meant. Does everyone understand that kind of concept? Does it make it right? Not in my opinion. Now, here's the third part of the lawsuit I kind of want you guys to really understand. It also states that the National Association of Realtors has a kind of an umbrella protection over companies that make less than 2.2 billion. Guys, last year we made what? 8.9 billion or whatever? 8.8 billion? Does that include us? We're not even protected by the lawsuit. It doesn't even help us. So how many companies does it leave out in the cold? The companies that are actually doing business. Who do they really help? That's my question, right? So now we are protected, thankfully, from the umbrella of the Anywhere settlement. And that has also still waiting final approval as well, just so you know. Now, I've heard from so Glenn, who is the attorney, who's the broker owner out of Michigan, was just recently at a big Sotheby leadership owner convention in the Midwest, and they had some legal folks coming to talk about the Anywhere settlement, and they feel very strongly that it looks like it will be approved and everything will be fine. But so you know, that umbrella protects each and every one of you while you're with us. We are all protected and we cannot be sued. So there were two companies that they actually tried to go after in these copycat lawsuits, and they all had to back down away from us because you're not going to win against us because of that umbrella lawsuit, settlement. So that's the great news. Mhm.
Talk about that time this summer. So
Yes.
the main issue of protection from lawsuits from that's it. That's
People
all.
who did not settle. So the first lawsuit against the National Association of Realtors, Remax, Anywhere, Berkshire Hathaway is still not settled. They're still out in the cold right now. We don't know what's going to happen to them, right? And then there were several others, but the problem is that, so Anywhere settled, Remax settled, right? National Association of Realtors went after and said, we're not settling. Berkshire Hathaway said, we're not settling. All these things kind of went on. And what ended up happening was now National Association of Realtors is settling. Berkshire Hathaway is not settling yet. And remember, the Department of Justice was still coming after the National Association of Realtors, which was going to happen on May 9th. We don't know what would have happened in that. They could have forced the issue of saying that the compensation needed to come out of the MLS. It could have happened. We don't know. Nobody knows, right? So, but the point here is twofold. One, we, being part of Anywhere, being part of Sotheby's, we are protected. Fabulous. And as long as you're a part of us, you are protected, which is great. We love that. But it doesn't protect other companies if they do more than 2.2 billion, the settlement of NAR. So that's kind of a scary thing, right?
They do less than
More,
two.
more. So who does it really protect? Not very good companies, right? 2.2 billion is not a lot of business. If you think, I mean, if you're a big company, right? Are you doing good business?
Fast business anyway, and just litigation, they will just have to.
Well, that means they can be litigated. They're still
Yes.
open to lawsuits is
Yeah.
the problem. So it continues on is my point. So we still don't know because the settlement hasn't happened, but that is the third part of that lawsuit, okay? Any questions on those things? Because we're going to continue talking about some of the things. Questions on that? Okay. Let us talk about the broker-buyer agreement for a second, okay? Having a broker-buyer agreement being a requirement now is going to be an amazing thing. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Let's see. Can everybody see my screen and you can see my dot loop? Yes? Everybody online? Anybody online? Tell me they can see it. Luz, can you see it?
I can see it.
Thank you,
Yes.
guys. Okay. So
Yes.
again, there will be changes to this. My assumption of the changes are really more to beef up more probably mediation or arbitration if they don't pay us. That's probably more about what will be changed on this, just so you know. They were trying to make it have a little more teeth. That's what the idea of the changes. But until I see some markups, I can't really speak to it. Now, there are 4 different broker-buyer agreements. And so you have to get yours, and actually let's do that. Let's take a look to show you that. Because if you don't pick the right one, this is where the confusion comes from. So if you go, oh, really? If you go to Florida Interactive Forms, and sometimes they make you put in your license number, ID number, and you say broker, buyer, let's see, let's just say buyer. All right, exclusive broker buyer agreement. Look how many there are here. So what do we have here? We have single agent, transaction brokerage. We have right up here, no brokerage relationship. And this is the one I've seen people use, transition to transaction. There's 4 guys. And this is where the confusion comes from. I want to be very clear on that. Just because we have a buyer agreement does not mean that we are working only for that buyer and we are a single agent. So let's have a little discussion on agency really quickly. I'm going to stop this really quick and we're going to talk about agency. There's difference. We are transaction brokerage, okay? In the state of Florida, as we just saw, there's 3. You have a single agent, you have transaction broker, and no brokerage relationship. Now, this is where I will tell you, as we brokers of Sotheby's, we're all talking, and people are like, well, if NAR goes away, we could each do code of ethics. What a mess, because every state does agency totally different. And so when you do agency totally different, that messes with the code of ethics. I'm going to tell you, this is a big mess. So in Florida, we typically never work as single agents. I have seen, as a matter of fact, I can tell you, when somebody works as anything other than a transaction broker, and this could change too, guys, but to date, this is the way it still will be. In your first meeting with that buyer, you would have to get them to sign a agency disclosure. So if you worked in North Carolina, you have to have an agency disclosure at your first meeting, no matter what. But here in the state of Florida, we don't have to have them sign anything because everyone is assumed to be a transaction broker. Okay, everybody with me? If you are not a transaction broker, if you work as a single agent or no brokerage relationship, you must have them sign an agency disclosure at your first meeting. They have to understand what your duties to them are or not duties are, okay? So a single agent, the difference between a single agent and a transaction broker, does anybody care to tell me what the differences are? There's two main differences. Anybody? Nobody. Everybody's scared. Nobody wants to take a stab at it.
The point is if you're a single agent, you can't work with anybody in that.
You can't work with anybody else in the office if you're a single agent. That's correct. But why?
Because you
Is it fiduciary duties?
don't have.
Correct.
a transaction.
You have fiduciary duties. You both said it. Absolutely great. Gold star to Keith and Andrea. You have a fiduciary responsibility to your customer. It's like a client, customer, client, attorney, client privilege kind of thing. And because of that, if you went rogue on me and had them sign a single agent agreement, and Carrie had a listing and you went rogue, you can't show Carrie's listing. You can't show any of our listings because that's
You own the business, we don't.
because I am a transaction broker. Exactly. And I own the business. And if you brought it to us, that would be called dual agency, which is illegal in the state of Florida. Exactly. So if you, by accident, I'm sure, Keith, decided to go rogue on me and wrote a single agency agreement, and then they wanted to see Carrie's listing, you would now need them to sign another disclosure that said transition to transaction, which means you're no longer going to have a fiduciary relationship. And the other one, which a single agent has, is called full confidentiality. And in transaction, we have limited, which is why we say, yeah, la, 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 don't tell me everything. I don't want to know. But see, this is the ridiculousness. If you've been a fiduciary and you have had full confidentiality, what are you going to forget? You're going to get amnesia? I mean, so how do you transition to transaction? It sounds ridiculous. I don't think amnesia works. But at any rate, that's what you would have to do. You would have to transition to transaction to enable them to see our listings. Does everybody understand that? Now, if you are no brokerage relationship, that doesn't mean you come from Miami and you're lazy. I know we all like to think that. That just means you're lazy. No brokerage relationship means all you're doing is you're accounting for funds and you're dealing honestly and fairly. Those are the only two duties you're going to provide. You have absolutely no relation to them other than that. Okay? You're really not representing them at all. That we don't do that. Now, in the 20 some odd years I've been doing this, what has to happen? Who knows the agency relationship, guys? Is it the listing side? Is it the buy side? Who knows what the brokerage relationship is?
Well, you all have to know.
It's only the buy side, right? How would the listing side know? The buy side has to send the disclosure at the time the offer is made. Otherwise, I wouldn't know, right? I don't know what the buyer's agent's relationship is with their customer. How would I know that, right? Just like I don't know what the listing agent's relationship is with their customer, but it's important that they would have to send with the offer that disclosure. So that's the only way the broker on the other side knows what they're, because on the list side, the buy side agent never knows what but it
It only has to be as if you're not a transaction.
only if you're not a transaction. If you're a transaction broker, you never have to send anything. You never have to sign anything because in the state of Florida, we're all assumed to be transaction brokers. Now, let me explain how transaction works. If you're a single agent, you're looking here at one buyer or you're looking at a listing agent, right? That you're looking at the seller. That is who your focus is on, right? If you are a transaction broker, you are looking at the transaction. Your focus is on the transaction, making sure it's a win-win transaction. You're not 100% one way or the other. You can't be, because that would be what? Fiduciary, full confidentiality. So always think of it as you're focused on the transaction, not the buyer, not the seller. That's why your buyer or your seller is your customer, not your client. The client implies fiduciary relationship, right? Everybody with me? Is there confusion on that at all? Because this is what happens. People get confused. They're like, well, if I sign a broker buyer agreement, I'm a single agent. You're not. you're still a transaction broker, which is why they have agency written into the broker buyer agreement, and there's 4 of them. There's the single agent, if you choose to work that way. There's a transaction broker, just telling them what you do. There's the no representation. And then there's the one that you would have to write if you're changing, which is transition to transaction. So this is why, for your enjoyment and confusion, or lack thereof, hopefully, I have taken the opportunity to create a folder for you called Buyer, where I moved into that folder only the transaction broker exclusive buyer agreement, exclusive broker buyer agreement. Everybody see that? I did not want to have any confusion because I have seen you guys send me the single agent. I've seen you send me the transition transaction. I've seen never got no brokerage relationship. That's a good one. But I want to make sure everybody understands why I do that. Okay. And of course, to make it simpler, but it's very important that you understand that. And it does say in here, brokerage relationship. Brokerage relationship, broker will act as a transaction broker, and then it tells us our duties. Broker will deal honestly and fairly, will account for all funds, will use skill, care, and diligence in all transactions, will disclose all known facts that materially affect the value of the residential property, which are not readily observable to the buyer, will present all offers and counteroffers in a timely manner unless directed otherwise in writing, and will have limited confidentiality with the buyer unless waived in writing. Those are your duties as a transaction broker. Nothing about fiduciary, which, by the way, was very fun. I had an attorney once tell me, you have to do this because you have fiduciary relationship. And I was so happy to send this back and say, really? Clearly you know nothing about Florida. We're transaction brokers. And no, we don't have fiduciary relationships. So no, we're not doing that. So you just, and it's the little things, right? It's so fun. So it's just about understanding what your duties are. This is why they are not clients. They're customers. So as soon as you start saying clients, you're implying fiduciary. So don't do it, okay? Especially today, when we're going to start using these, we don't want to create confusion. Now, I'm going to have a lot of training for you guys. I'm really making sure that you understand how to prove and explain your value. Because here's another thing. Let's talk about this before we get in here. There's a lot of bad press out there right now. You guys hear it? My favorite. Home prices are going to go down. That's a special one. Buyer agents are going to work for free. Really? I didn't know we're going pro bono. That's special. Yeah, all sorts of fun stuff. I read one in CNN. They said that a home that was $417,000, I think the commission at 6% was, I don't know, $23,000, $28,000, something like that. They said it's going to go down to $12,000, maybe $6,000. Very interesting math. These are idiots. CNN, I really wanted to write back. But here's the big thing, guys. Do not talk to the press. Do not. Can I say it any louder? Do not talk to, I wanted to scream at the press. You morons, but you can't. Because first of all, they will twist our words. We are the devil right now. We have to be very careful. We are professionals. We know the truth, right? And we know that we're not working for free. So we just have to do our job, explain our value, and hold the line. That's what we have to do. And hold our tongue. That's going to be the harder one, right? Because we cannot come out there, especially if we get fired up about it and start saying stuff, that's going to be really bad. So we have to be very, very careful not to say anything, especially if the press contacts you. Don't say a word. The reality is, guys, we may have some buyers that start calling listing agents because they think that the listing agent is going to represent them for free. Why would you do that? If you represent a buyer for free, not only are you working for free, so I don't know, unless you'd like to do pro bono work. If they sue you, do you think your errors and omissions are going to cover you? No. Good luck with that. So here you go. I'm going to tell you, make sure that we all know our talk track. April 4th, we're doing another training on buyer representation. We're going to have a wonderful panel. They've already sent out the invite. I will send it out again. I'm going to do training on how to negotiate in your commission. Because there's two ways to do this, but we don't want to violate the code of ethics. Now, interesting thing, you can't negotiate what's in the MLS. Well, there won't be anything in the MLS, so that's the first thing. That takes that off the table. But the reality is you still can't put your own well-being before that of your customer. So you can't say, I'm only going to put this offer in if you give me a commission of XYZ. That is still a code of ethics violation any way you look at it, right? So you can still negotiate in buyer and seller agree. Seller will pay 3% to buyer's agents at closing. You can still put that in there as long as your buyer agrees with that all day long. And if that happens, if it was a VA, if it's an FHA, your buyer's safe. They're covered. But what happens on the off chance that the seller says no? The buyer has to be willing to either pay the entire thing or make up the difference, right? The seller might say, I'll pay 2%. So if you had written in your buyer broker agreement, and this is what we're going to go over, 3, then the buyer has to know, okay, look, you're paying me 1 and they'll pay 2. This is where you have to be really good at A, explaining your value, and B, explaining how commission works. Listen, anybody who's done commercial has done this for years. So it's not like it's not been done before, but anybody who's not, this is going to be new territory for you, and that's okay. But the worst part about the whole thing is you're going to get a lot of uneducated buyers. Jill, what, can you come and share that story? She has a story from just this morning at the coffee shop. Mhm.
I said, what do we say to you as an agent? And then the other guy goes, yeah, I heard the 6% is completely gone. Buyers agents will not be getting paid. It's just gonna, and she's like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I'm gonna.
Fantastic.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
All for these idiots.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that story. Buyers agents will not get paid. But here, guys, here's the beautiful thing. This gives us the edge. There are going to be customers who are not our customers. There are people now who are not our customers.
You can always sell by owner, always.
They always could sell by owner. Listen, I'm going to share with you. Is Dawn Giacchetti on? Dawn on? No, Dawn today. Dawn is dealing with a customer right now who's a seller who one of those flat rate deals, right? She's representing the buyer who's paying her. Or maybe they're paying through the flat rate. I don't remember. But anyway, irrelevant. This is so interesting. So the seller who has no representation, right? Because it's a flat rate thing, keeps going to Dawn asking her questions about the deal. And Dawn's like, I'm sorry, I cannot answer you. And they say, yes, you have to answer me. You're a transaction broker. She says, I don't have to answer you. I am a transaction broker, which has nothing to do with you. I am not representing you. I'm representing my customer. You don't understand what agency means. I'm not your representative. We have no relationship at all in this transaction. You are doing this by yourself. Talk to your flat rate company or whoever's representing you. They keep asking her. So she came to me. She's like, I am right on this. And I'm like, absolutely, you're right. People, and even these ones that think they know everything, they don't get it. Agents don't get it. Okay, so you guys have to understand, you need to know better than everybody what your duties are and what they're not. What you'll do for money, what you won't do for money, right? Like where those lines are, what your duties are expected to be and what they're not. Okay, and that's why when we do a broker buyer agreement, you have to truly understand it. So let's take a peek at it, right? I know I've taught on it before, but we're going to look at it again. And again, we know it's going to change, but I think probably it's just going to be in the part where they try to enforce it. But we'll see. The parties, the buyer and the broker. Okay, that's the office. And it says the exclusive right to work with the buyer through negotiation and acquisition of a suitable property. The beautiful thing, guys, when you're representing a buyer like this, you show them everything. Think about how many times, well, first of all, who represents buyers right now, guys? Mostly
Mm.
new agents. New agents who half the time don't know what they're doing. You make your money when you buy, not when you sell. If you buy well, you will make money in a good market or a bad market. If you did not buy well, you got to hope and pray for a good market, right? So you better be with the best agent when you're buying, because that's when you're actually making the best choices and making the most money. That is, every investor knows that, but not every homeowner knows that. So this is something you better be putting into your value proposition. You know, this is your largest investment, whether you look at yourself as an investor or not, this is your largest investment. And this is the time when you make the most money off of it or not. So you want to make sure not only you're getting what you want the most out of the property, but that you get the best value of this property. By the way, if you're not doing a CMA for them and giving them all like-kind properties and finding off-market properties for sale by owners, I mean, are you really doing your job? Not really. But if you weren't getting paid, would you have done that? No. Why would you? But see, if they're going to pay you either way, now you're willing to work, aren't you? That's the difference. So that's one of the greatest things. Now, the term, it begins on the day you start. And I'd like to put a year, you can put 6 months, but give yourself time to work with these people. Don't put it down a week that you're going to just show the property. Give yourself time to work with them, but that's up to you, how long you want to put that down for, okay? The type of property, location, price range, this is your opportunity to get on the same page with them. This is your warm up with them, okay? You know that they're either buying cash or pre-approved, because why? You're never going to be sitting there ready to go show them homes if they're not already pre-approved, or actually you have the pre-approval and you've got or proof of funds ready to go. When would you have done that? Why would you do that? No way, you're not wasting your time, right? Now, these are your obligations. We have so much more ready for you to go. Wait till you see the good stuff we've come up with. But these are the things that the basic things that you are going to be doing for them. You're definitely going to use all your skill and knowledge. You're going to be holding their hand through every step of this process. And you're going to let them know what this process entails. It's not just finding them the perfect home under any stone, whether it's on the market or it's not. It's also making sure that they're not overpaying for the property. It's also making sure that you're doing CMAs to see how much did they pay for it? What does it look like? How much can they actually get for it when they are ready to sell, right? It's also making sure that if they're getting financing, that they're getting the best terms for financing. You're going to be helping them with all those things, because guess what? You would have done it anyway. But now you're going to let them know that, right? Now, you're going to work as a transaction broker, and you're going to make sure. I don't really like to go in if you're putting in an offer with the same home with another person, that you're going to tell them. I don't really go into that, but that's what this says here. You're letting them know. Obviously, you're going to maintain all the rules and regulations for fair housing and do this in the utmost ethical way, and provide all the proper guidelines that you need to. And all you ask in return is that they help you do your job. Now, Glenn had a really nice one. This is your loyalty agreement. I like that. But I like to say that they help you do your job, that if anybody contacts them, they tell you that they are making sure that they're giving you all of their information so that you can help them in the best way possible. Because let's face it, if they're not telling you everything that's accurate, how can you possibly help them, right? And if they're going to the builders, that they're giving your information, or they're not telling them the information, because the fact is, if they get registered without you, you can't help them. And we all know that that's true. So they have to make sure that they're not either, they're telling them that they're working with you, they're giving them your card, or they're not telling them their real name, because the fact of the matter is you'll be locked out in a second with the builder. So it's very important that you cover all of that with them. Now, you could charge them a retainer if you want, or you could say, some people charge a retainer. I don't. This is where you can write a 0 and cross that out. But this is how I do get paid for my work for you. I do all of this work for you, and I only charge 3%. Now, the good news is, if the seller is offering some part or all of the 3%, you don't have to pay me anything. we can negotiate in to see if we can get the seller to pay for that. And again, whatever part of that 3%, all part or none, you know, if he can pay for that, that will come off of the 3% that you would pay me. But of course, if the seller's not willing to pay the 3%, then you would pay the 3% at closing. Okay? Fabulous. Now, I wouldn't talk about the lease part because we're not in the habit of doing leases, right? Let's not even go there. And then the protection period, I would certainly say, listen, I want to make sure that everything, this is a process, I'm in it for the long haul for you. I know this could get stressful. If anything goes wrong or you get upset about anything or you're confused about anything, if I can't help you, we have a whole team here to help you. We've got my broker, we've got our marketing team, we've got everybody here to help you. So please let me know. I'm not a mind reader. We just want to make sure that this is the best process for you. And we're here to help anything that you need. And then you say, just sign here. That's all I go through. How simple was that, guys? Did anybody feel that this was scary? You have anything to say, Keith? You feel scared about it? Do you feel like I missed anything?
So Gary, how many days did you put after termination date?
What
30
was that?
days or
Termination
how many days?
for the protection period, 180.
Yeah, 180.
I put 180. You can put whatever you want, but I like 180. Now, I want you to know that as a broker, listen, I don't let listings go, but I don't really care about buyers. If you want to release a buyer, I don't care. Here.
So I wanted to get into the part where you said that once, if the seller agrees to pay the commission, then we can put that in the contract. What if,
Yes.
so what if there's a situation where, I just feel like okay, so what if there's a situation where they've signed this, let's say they've signed it for 3%, right?
Right.
Then this is the part that gets sticky as far as negotiations.
How
And,
so?
Well, so for instance, when you're negotiating and it's part of the contract
Yep.
and you're discussing with the listing agent what the seller's willing to pay for commission. I'm sure they already have, gone through that. If not, they'll touch base with their seller, discuss it. So if for some reason, so tell me if they say, oh, they're willing to pay 1.5% and then your buyer pays 1.5%.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So then that's obviously going to be put in.
It would go on the HUD.
Gotcha.
So that's the whole thing, guys. So let's say to Carrie's point, you have a 3% over here. And the seller is willing to pay 1.5%. So at closing, the seller contributes 1.5%, and then the buyer would contribute 1.5%. Where you have a problem, and I'm gonna be very upfront, is if the buyer's FHA and they don't have 1.5%, or their VA, they can't pay 1.5%. They're not allowed. So now we have to go back to the drawing board and say, what, you can't buy that house.
So I have an idea. So what
Mhm.
about saying to the selling agent, like you calculate the 1.5, I'm just trying to get creative. Let's say you calculate the 1.5% and let's say you agree to give them additional 1.5% for the house, right? Like, let's say the house.
Add it to the price of the home and
add
have
to the
them give
price
it
of
to,
the Home and then say.
we're
credit-
gonna have to get creative like
yeah,
that.
like credit at closing.
I agree with that.
then
So
it's kind of lumped into.
what they're talking about right now, that's exactly what they were doing before.
Yeah.
That's exactly what they're saying. The home prices are gonna go down. No, they're not. It's gonna be the same way it was before. It's just that we have to negotiate it all at the time of contract. That's the only difference. You're 100% right. What will happen? The VA is aware of this. The FHA is aware of this. They've all been talking about the fact that this is a very possible situation. So hopefully they will be coming up with new legislation on how to make these things possible. But they move at a snail's pace. So this is going to be happening supposedly mid-July. So maybe in 3 years, they will have some solutions. I mean, let's be real. I mean, I like to say sooner, right? But we don't know. So in the interim, to your point, yeah, we're going to have to get creative. And that's probably one of the creative solutions we'll do. Absolutely. Yep, 150%. Now, in the villages where they don't work with realtors, It was the same thing before, right? So if it's on a resale property, you do what you would normally do, you would negotiate. But if it's with the builder, they never worked with you anyway. So the buyer would just pay for you.
Can't say this, because I haven't tried, but everybody that buys and sells in the villages knows you have to have two representations.
You have to have what?
Two representatives.
Okay,
In the villages, one,
uh-huh.
or you don't see half of what's out.
So true.
If I have my buyer sign this agreement,
Uh-huh. Can you exclude the if they buy with the villages? Yeah. You have a comment section here. If you want to say special clauses, if you purchase with the villages directly, I will not charge you. You can do that. Do I think it's a great idea? No, because then you just wasted all your time. Or you could say, if you purchase with the villages, you only pay me a flat fee of such and such. You could do that. I would suggest you do something, because otherwise you're going to be wasting a lot of your time.
that's.
But it's a
currently what-
business, but see, that's a business choice. If you choose to continue doing that, that's up upon you, but you might want to still give yourself at least $500 or something. I mean, that's where you have to figure that out.
But the problem comes in, if I don't get them to sign it, now I'm in violation with this agreement,
Well,
with this, with the.
that you and everybody else, they will not be able to work with any realtor outside of the villages if they don't get them to sign that. It will not just be you, it'll be any general realtor. They can only work with the builder.
I'm not worried about the other ones, I'm worried about me.
Well, that's my
In this
point.
case, I'm worried about me, because there are going to be agents out there that are not gonna get it to sign until they go into the offer. You know that, I know that. Those agents are going to get caught, and they're going to go away.
Yeah.
But in the meantime.
You're
for
right.
The next 6 to 8 months-
So you may have to start just doing, that you excluded and then, to get a little stronger on it. And, I mean, you're just gonna have to play with that. Because essentially that's what you were doing anyway. You're just not getting paid if they did that. I Right.
like your
So-
idea of putting $500.
Yeah, I would do something like that, a flat fee if you chose to go with it. At least you got paid something. Yeah, something, gas. Hello? I mean, just
I
something,
mean,
but
this would also give us more leverage to get the 3%.
absolutely.
Like, it might be a more positive thing for buyers agents
Guys,
to get the full 3%.
I think for us, it's gonna be a huge value add. How many of you have been working on buyers and you're like, oh, 2%, right?
Yeah.
I've heard it from all of you. Now, why? You always could have said 3%, got 2% from the seller and got a percentage from the buyer, or negotiated in the 3%. But this will give you the confidence to do it.
I guess I take this as a little. Right now. We couldn't negotiate. In a higher percentage. Because it's against. Code.
No, you could. You always could, but it couldn't be you, and it still can't be you. It could only be the buyer and seller. So as an agent, if you are negotiating, unless if you can only negotiate before you bring a customer, because then you're not putting your customer before you, you're just negotiating commissions before you bring anybody. But if you have brought your customer likes the home, you want to put in an offer. Now you're trying to negotiate your commission, you're in violation of the code of ethics because you're putting your wants and needs and before that of your customer, you're in violation of Article 1. However, if you're saying, and your buyer's okay with it, that is the thing. And if you did a buyer broker agreement, of course they'd be okay with it, right? Part of the offer, just like negotiating and closing costs, buyer and seller agree, seller to contribute, maybe it was 2%, an additional 1%, so a total of 3% to the buyer's agent at closing. Right? You could have always done that. Nobody did, but you could have always done that. That was always allowable. Nobody did it.
As part of the contract,
Yep,
not as, I'm not bringing this.
correct.
You can't do
As
that.
a threat? No,
Mm.
that is the code of ethics violation. As a people
That's-
calling and saying, will you give me this? That's a code of ethics violation.
that's
but-
The agent's not showing you because it's.
Exactly, which is really hard to prove, but that is truly a code of ethics violation too. Yeah, exactly. But this is when you're negotiating it in, you're doing it from the buyer and seller standpoint. That is not a code of ethics violation. Buyers and sellers can negotiate whatever they want. Everything is negotiable in a contract.
Did you,
Mhm.
when you were on your call with the other?
Yep.
With the other offices?
Uh-huh.
Did you guys touch base on the subject of the lenders and how this is gonna impact them?
So we didn't this time. I've had that conversation plenty before. Florida Realtors, actually, Dwan Watkins has had that conversation with us when they first came out with this. And then we were talking about the inevitability of this possibly happening. And she said at that time, which was last year, maybe spring, that that FHA and VA were aware and working on this. Yeah, here we are. So, so again, those ships move like the Titanic. So I don't know how long it's going to take, but I mean, they're aware, people know. What they're trying to do is create new places on the HUD. If they can find new ways to put it on the HUD, they can maybe kind of go around those things. That's what they're trying to come up with. But it's not been done yet. Mhm.
I wonder if the title companies splitting out compensation really help this situation. You know, because every time, by the time they X to the A and B to buy, you know, like.
I mean,
It should have always been one line,
yeah,
and then
I,
the broker should have actually been taking care of the broker to broker instead of the realtor.
you know, honestly, attorneys want to make money, they'll find ways to make money. I don't think any of that had to do with, they just saw a way to make money and that was the easiest way for them to make money, let's be honest. But that's what's come of it. Now, again, personally, the buyer broker thing to me is a win because now everybody will be forced to do it, which puts all of us in an even playing ground. So it's not like one buyer will say, well, I'm not gonna sign with you because I don't have to sign with anybody else. Well, you really do. You have to sign with everybody or you have no representation. And when they go to the listing agent direct, why is the listing agent? Now, let's say you're the listing agent and a buyer comes to you and says, well, I want you to put in an offer. No, I'm sorry. Well, that's terrific. I would be happy to. My fee for working with buyers is 3%. Right? This are all the wonderful things I'm going to do for you.
Carrie, I
Yes.
have a question. Sorry, I have to log out soon. So, if that happens, so somebody calls me on my listing and they want me to represent that, well, not represent them, but kind of represent them, right?
Yep. Mhm.
If I say no, I'm also not representing my seller well because now I have a buyer, but I'm putting my interest first.
Nope, not true. You do not have to work for free.
Okay.
That is not what you've agreed to do for your seller. So you say,
Okay.
I'm happy to put in your offer. This is what my fee is to represent you. If they say, no, I don't want to pay, you're just going to put my offer in. You say, I'll be happy to put your offer and send me a contract. No, you have
Okay.
to write it. No, I'm sorry. If you
And-
don't write your contract, then I will be representing you.
Okay. And one more question that I think is going to be relevant for a lot of our listings. What happens in July for the listings that we already have up?
That has
are the commissioners
not
just-
been determined.
Okay.
Do not worry about anything that's previously already in the MLS.
No, just
Don't worry about anything.
because
Oh.
some sellers have asked. That's why.
Just say, this
So-
is as usual. This is a proposed settlement. Nothing has been approved as of yet. So we are still doing business as usual. That's all I would say.
Great.
Mhm.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's what I said.
Yep.
Okay.
Till-
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome, Andrea. Until this changes, guys, we really have to move forward as if nothing has changed. On our side, preparation wise, we're going to be prepared for mid-July to change as the world may change. But in terms of the sellers, never let them see you sweat. When people say, well, I don't want to offer the buy side compensation, well, I guess you don't want to sell your home. Well, why would we take a listing where they don't want to offer that? I'm sorry, then that's not something we want to take. Why would we do that? And I'm going to tell you, even after this goes through, we're still not going to want to take that listing. Who are you going to sell it to? Right? Who's going to show it? I guarantee you, we will find ways to be able to communicate to the other side, to the buyer's agents, that we are offering compensation. And that's gonna make our listings sell quicker than everybody else's, and it's gonna make us even stronger listing agents. That's the goal, right? This is probably gonna help us come out ahead even better, but all of that has to be figured out. So I cannot say how, when, where, why, because again, all of this has to be figured out. But the rule is not that we can't, it's that we can't in the MLS. That was what the settlement was, that it cannot go in the MLS.
You know,
Carrie,
every
oh,
week
sorry.
You can see how these agents are reacting. And they're talking about putting the compensation in privately, not in realtor, and putting it in showing time.
You can't though, that's still in the MLS.
And what about showing?
I'd still say because it's still somehow related to MLS, they would probably consider that a violation.
Saying I was gonna do that. I'm just
Yeah.
saying,
I mean,
This is something I'm seeing.
I understand what they're thinking. Now, Showing Time's owned by Zillow. So I wouldn't be surprised if Zillow didn't offer some format of being able to do that. But remember, Zillow, in my opinion, is going to be in trouble because Zillow charges realtors tons of money to buy buyers, right? Buyer leads. And these buyer leads right now are going to think that you're going to work for free. How many people are going to want to buy them? How many people truly are going to want to work with buyers right now? I mean, except for those of us who are really going to be prepared at buyer broker agreements and know how to do this and know how to negotiate. And we aren't buying the buyer leads anyway, right? We're going to have good buyer leads that are actually wanting to be higher end and that kind of a thing. These are the people who are going to understand and want representation anyway. But the ones that come from Zillow, who already want you to work for free, who are already working with 3 different agents, who's going to pay for that? So I think that's probably another reason that Zillow's gone to the Showing Plus, which is the one that kind of showcases your listing in another way and puts your face there for $400 a month. And then every additional listing costs a lot more. I'm not surprised if that's the reason that they started going down that way. Did you notice they're going really listing heavy now? They're trying to really promote listings. They saw the writing on the wall too. So interesting, but I am sure they also try to come up with their own MLS, Zillow. So I am sure they're going to come up with some kind of way to make it, appealing for people to want to work with buyers because that's a huge business for Zillow. So I guarantee.
Carrie,
Yes.
I've been listening all weekend to the news and just getting, like you, more and more frustrated with the way they're promoting it, that they're painting it as this is such a plus for buyers and for sellers that they're not going to have to pay commissions anymore. I mean, it's ridiculous. Why isn't somebody from our side, why isn't somebody from National Association of Realtors on, why aren't they in the media this weekend, or why aren't they getting on the media and putting forward our perspective that it's not the way that it's being presented? Why isn't somebody speaking on our behalf?
I think, Janice, and again, I don't know, of course, I'm not part of that, right? But I do think that they have to be very careful until everything is approved. Remember, anything you put out there now can be used against you. This is a proposed settlement. The lawyers, the blood is still in the water. You know how they are. We have to be very, very careful. They're just, the DOJ, that is still out there till May 9th. I mean, all eyes, all microscopes are all facing, all guns. I mean, everything is still facing towards us. So unfortunately, we have to take all of that negative press and suck it up right now. And that's, I think, the problem. And it's almost like they're baiting us, if you ask me. That's really what I feel like. And so that's why we have to be very, very careful not to respond. But got to continue working as professional and diligent as ever, and knowing if they really believe that, man, are they stupid. I mean, seriously, who is going to work for free? If someone ever asked you that, I'd say, well, what do you do for a living? Are you planning to do that for free as well?
Right.
That's interesting.
Absolutely.
Have you chosen to do that for free? That's great, because I don't know anybody else who has. Yeah.
If we have, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Andre.
No.
So if we have, for example, a seller and he doesn't want to offer commission because he's a well-versed person that says, hey, I know everyone is obliged to have, or it's now mandatory to have a buyer broker agreement, and only these people are going to show, because from what I understand, we have to have a buyer broker agreement,
Not yet,
any customer, right?
not yet, not until mid-July, and it's not approved yet.
No, yeah. But if it gets approved by mid-July, we all have to have a buyer broker agreement.
Yes.
So they're like, since everyone has to work with that, let them work for what they already agreed to with their agent.
So listen, we
No?
can't say what or we will or will not do, but I can guarantee, I doubt highly that we will take any listings that will not offer a co-broke. Because why would we?
Okay.
How are you gonna sell it, Andrea? How are you gonna sell it?
Assuming that
unless
everyone
we-
has a buyer broker agreement out there.
Yeah, but no, first of all, that's not true. You know how many agents don't even know how to work with a buyer broker agreement? You know how many agents are gonna leave the industry? The reality is this is gonna be a bump that's gonna take a while to get through. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
if
there's good and
all the-
bad in this, right? For everyone, for the
for us,
consumers
there's
and
some
for
good-
us on both
yeah.
sides.
Well, listen, for us, because we're gonna know how to do it, I think there's gonna be positives about the buyer broker agreement. But for all the new agents, all the people who used to bring buyers, they're gonna exit. It's gonna be a mass exodus. If you don't see that, I work with a lot of with the new member orientation. I mean, all those people, are you kidding me? They don't know how to do a buyer broker agreement. How do they explain value? They don't even know themselves, right? So they just work with buyers because it was easy to get a buyer. Now they're not going to be able to do that. You're going to tell the buyer that they need to pay them commission. I mean, so my point is, the seller is not going to have that all these people with buyer broker agreements ready to bring in people. So, but again, I'm sure we will come up with a solution, you know, and until we have one, we can't speak to that, right? Because how do we know? This is so fresh right now, so new. So I can't say what our rules and regulations are going to be because I don't even know. But I'm going to say, I can't imagine a world where we're going to say, sure, no problem. You don't want to offer a co-broke. Well, we'd love to take that listing. Why would we want to do that? Does that make any sense? No. But at the same token, I also can't imagine us saying, yeah, we're going to make you say, what do you want to offer? And then not be able to communicate that. That doesn't make any sense either, right? So I'd imagine if we're going to say that, we must have a way to get that word out. But until I know those things, I really can't speak with authority on any of it because it's all guesses really right now.
Carrie,
Mhm.
how will this impact referrals?
Well, that is a great question, but this is national. Remember, this is the National Association of Realtors being sued. This is a proposed lawsuit that affects everybody. So everyone knows, no matter what state you come from, you have to have a buyer broker agreement. And they'll have to sign a new one when they come with us. So I think it shouldn't, I mean, wherever they came from, they had to do it there too. So I don't think it will be that difficult. It might actually be easier because in a lot of states, they already had to do it. To be honest, Florida is one of the worst states because we've never had to do it. I talked to many brokers. Maine has been doing it. North Carolina has been doing it. Colorado's been doing it. Michigan's been doing it. There's a lot of states that have already been doing buyer broker agreements. We have been one of the few that have not.
Is it something that's gonna go up to our legislation?
Probably. I'm sure they probably will have to. They're gonna have to, because if it's something that is the National Association is doing, they're gonna have to probably put it into some kind of statute or something. Probably DBPR will probably add it or something. Because how do you make everybody do it if you don't make it some kind of a statute? I am imagining, but again, I could be wrong. I don't know. Could be Florida realtors.
Will we have to submit our buyer broker agreement to title companies so that they know exactly the percentage, or how does that get communicated to?
Yes, I'm sure.
Okay.
Right now, that's what you do. If you have a buyer broker agreement, you give it to the title company so they know the percentage that they have to pay. Yeah. But again, great
And
questions.
then in that regard, if that's already agreed upon and my buyers are paying, then that would obviously be nowhere on the contract.
Correct.
It's just-
Because if your buyer is paying you, it's not on the contract. It's not, because you're not party to the contract. But if it's been negotiated
Right.
by the buyer and
Right.
seller, then that is on the contract and the seller is paying for the buyer. And so now therefore it is on the contract. Great question.
Is there a way that we can get standardized clause for the buyer brokers agreement? Or
Yes, but I'd like to first get the finalized new one and yeah, but absolutely, yeah, we sure will.
Not saying we all need it today or tomorrow.
Yeah, no, but yeah,
Once
we will.
start using it, especially in my environment, we are going to need a way to allow them out. Or we will never get another buyer.
Yeah, and for you specifically for that, I can get you one actually today. I mean, that's not a problem. But those kinds of things, we can always get standardized clauses for specific instances like that, not a problem. And this is gonna be a fluid situation, guys. I highly recommend, it's not required, of course, remember, this is not even approved. But it's not even until July, if and when it gets approved, right? But I suggest you start working with them as soon as possible, because the more practice you get with them, the better. And especially now, these buyers think that they're gonna get, you to work for free. It's either you work with the buyer broker agreement and get them used to it, or you don't work with the buyer. Because nobody's gonna work for free. Let's be honest. I wouldn't work for free. Anybody on this call gonna work for free? No,
No, but I have a question on that subject. This is Kate.
I know.
Hello. Hi. So let's say, touching on that subject, it doesn't have to be approved yet by July. You're working with a seller who you're explaining the value of, like, we get it. You don't have to pay that extra, but then we're not going to take the listing for the, if there's no co-op, but they are going to turn right around and immediately be a buyer. And they kind of throw you the curveball that's like, okay, well, I'll do the listing for 6%, 3 to you and 3 to the other person, but then I'm going to turn around and buy. I don't want to sign the buyer broker. I want to cut, like a cutback or whatever on that buyer or broker side agreement, meaning you potentially could be then working for free on the buyer side, whether they were the same person or not, but they kind of are making it like cohesive, like, work. It's like a lump deal. So what would your like role play back to them be?
So that's kind of a little convoluted and I'm kind of confused. So they're selling their home. They're offering 6% to the list side, 6% to the buy side. They'll write a buyer broker agreement with you, but they don't want to have any commission on that.
Well, they kind of are, if they phrase it like, well, I don't want to have to pay you again because I'm already paying the first time and it's going to be like a back-to-back deal. Now, technically it's 2 separate deals, so you don't want to be working for free on the second one. What would your response be, like, quickly, if that was a curveball
Simply
thrown to you?
say, well, that's terrific, but again, these are 2 separate times. So if I'm doing it all at the same deal, I could completely understand that, but we're selling your home, that's gonna be a whole separate thing, and then I'm gonna have to actually go out and show you homes. I mean, I don't have to show you homes, you already found your home? Did you find your home already, or do we actually have to go out and look at homes?
Okay.
I mean, if we have to
Gotcha.
go out and look at homes, and then I have to do CMAs, and I had to have maybe find you off-market properties, and then I mean, that's a lot of work. If I don't have to do any of that, sure, I'll do that for nothing. But if you actually want me to work, I'm sorry, I can't do that pro bono. What do you do for a living? What does he do for a living? Okay, I would say, I mean, if you're a doctor,
No, sorry. I was just saying hypothetically, like, because
but
I've
what
had
does he do
someone
for
in
a
the past
living?
throw that at you.
You're him. What do you do for a living, Kate?
An attorney.
Great. So you're going to give me free attorney services for how long?
Life.
Life. Well, I think that's fair. Sure. We write that up. And
I'm just kidding.
That's fair.
Okay. All right.
Like, you just have to break it down into what you do. Like, sure, if I'm not doing anything extra, why not? But if I actually have to go out and do this and do that, and why would I do all that for free? What are you going to give me for free? Are you going to do my deed? You're going to give me a life trust. You're going to give me, I mean, what free services are you giving me in return? Are we bartering now? I mean, I can barter. We can barter if you want, right? I mean, my mom could get a ladybird trust. Let me think of the other things you could do for me for free. Right?
Buyers are more, I feel like there's more like physical work entailed. Show them like 20 houses.
Are a ton of work.
Or like,
Yeah, I'm gonna go drive around. I mean, gas alone. You're gonna give me some gas cards? I mean, what's going on with that? Are you gonna pay for my gas? Yeah.
My husband's had a heart attack. We've changed our minds. We're going home.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Right. I'm sorry, guys, but I don't believe in working for free. I would be terrible as a pro bono anything. No, I don't believe in any of that. No, thank you. All right. Any other questions, guys? No?
Carrie,
Yes.
how does it work internally when we're referring? That percentage, is that going to change because?
Nope.
Nope.
No.
Okay.
Nope. I mean, think about it. You've referred to states, Maine, Michigan, like you've referred to plenty of states that are actually have required California, North Carolina that have broker buyer agreements. So it's not going to affect any of it. Mm-mm. Good question.
Okay.
So thank you guys for hopping on. We have Ninja Mastery on Thursday. And I look forward to seeing you all for that. And I think moving forward, I'm going to switch the Tuesday social media to Thursdays. So instead of having a Tuesday, because I think that was kind of a weird day for people, I'm going to move everything to Thursday. So it'll be Monday, Thursday again, Monday, Thursday. So I'm going to make a switch in our calendar for that. Sound good, everybody? I have yet to see that. Okay. So have a great rest of your day. And if anybody needs help, let me know. Bye, guys.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.